A week ago, Stig broke off our engagement. And our relationship is over.
I came here so excited to find love, and I'm leaving alone.
I'd be willing to do whatever it takes to win her back.
Are you willing to block your ex right now?
I can't block her because...
He ended it with a text. There's a certain moment in life when your heart doesn't break, it just freezes, suspended by disbelief. Because the man you thought you'd marry decided to wipe his hands clean of you with a single, cold, pixelated message. I'm talking about an engagement ring swapped out for 3 lines of text that sting harder than rejection in person ever could. Before her coffee, Aviva checked her phone and her whole world tilted. This is the jaw-drop moment you don't recover from quickly. Welcome to Reality Sport. I'm Oliva, and this is the kind of mess they don't show you in fairy tales. You're not going to want to blink during this saga because marriages break, promises shatter, but dignity sometimes doesn't even get a goodbye. Subscribe if you're into seeing the real, raw sides of love unfiltered, and hit the comments if you dump someone by text or think karma keeps score. Because after what happened to Aviva, you'll want answers too. All it took was a little ping and a digital breakup that left more questions than closure, a chapter ripped out when she was least ready, and trust discarded with a laziness that borders on disrespect. Was Stig sabotaging, or was he always this checked out? Imagine planning your future with someone who thinks a breakup text qualifies as closure. Picture Aviva, phone in hand, blinking back tears and panic, trying to replay what went wrong in her mind when that cold message dropped, a lifetime of inside jokes reduced to a few unemotional words, as if "I can't do this" explains anything at all. Her instant thought wasn't denial or anger, it was a numb search for meaning, as if she scrolled up, maybe their history would make sense of his betrayal. Who does this? Is it pure immaturity, some twisted power move, or a guy who never had guts to begin with? Aviva's head swam with questions that begged for real answers. Was the relationship always doomed, or did he find a new distraction? Did he hit send and sigh in relief, or does he think he'll slip back into her life when the dust settles? And why does it somehow hurt more, not just for her, but for everyone watching, when promises are broken so casually? That message was more than words. It was an act of ghosting on steroids, the final vanishing act from a fiancé who didn't even pick up the phone. You ever wonder how someone's supposed to process the end of a future that was promised? When yesterday you were picking wedding colors and today you're ghosted by your own almost husband? But Aviva's story, brutal as it is, isn't even rare. Lies by omission. Love affairs run by cowardice. Emotional escape artists running for the easy way out. Did he ever love her? Could you ever trust someone again after they cut and run like that? That's the thread pulling through not just Aviva's heartbreak, but an entire cast tangled in their own messy love stories, just waiting to snap. The symptoms, vanishing communication, avoidant silences, partners choosing ego over empathy, start showing before the crash, but almost nobody sees the car wreck coming until the airbag's already gone off. And here's the wildest twist. Nobody yet knows what the text even said. Only that Aviva saw it, read it twice, and then what? What do you actually do after getting left at the altar of your own inbox? Do you rage, beg, delete his number, or reach for anything that'll prove it wasn't your fault? And what if the rest of the couples on this wild ride are staring down their own digital landmines that haven't exploded yet? Hang tight, because what Aviva does next will leave you needing to check your own messages, just in case you missed a red flag hiding in plain sight. Nobody thinks the last night of a once-in-a-lifetime trip will end in tears behind a locked bedroom door, but that's exactly where Elise landed. Mascara smudged and dreams in shreds, thanks to Josh's relentless hunt for one more good time. Hours before her taxi to the airport, when couples should be savoring every last second, Josh vanished into a thumping house party, friends, booze, laughter echoing down the halls, the sound of relationship carnage with each pulse of bass. Elise's bags were packed, but no one packs for heartbreak. She wandered the apartment, every step echoing how alone she felt in their crowded world. No texts, no excuses. Josh wasn't just physically gone, he'd checked out emotionally the minute the door clicked behind him. Despite all the Instagram happy couple photos, the trust had been thin for weeks. Every time Josh hit the clubs without her, every time he turned his phone upside down or silenced his notifications, Elise felt her place in his life shrink. She tried to bury doubt under optimism. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe the final night would snap him awake. Instead, she got windows rattling, unfamiliar voices in her living room, and strangers crowding out any hope of a true goodbye. She retreated to the sanctuary of her bedroom, locking the door, face pressed to the pillow, muffling her sobs and wondering when being someone's girlfriend became so lonely. What keeps people up at night isn't always what's said. It's what's left unsaid. Elise tried to rationalize Josh's need for distraction. Was he scared of intimacy, allergic to quiet, or desperate to show off a single life he didn't even want? She replayed his laughter through the wall as she tried to convince herself this was normal, that tomorrow might bring clarity. But the silence that followed when Josh finally left for hours, without a word, thundered with every unasked question. In the morning, when he returned smelling like cheap vodka and regret, his apology was a soft whisper through the bedroom door, 3 words, on repeat, like a song nobody wants to dance to anymore. There's a special kind of ache in realizing the person you love keeps choosing everything but you. Do you call it addiction or just plain escapism? Is Josh the victim of his own arrested development, unable to face real commitment, so he parties it into oblivion? Elise tried to confront him with her pain, searching his face for any trace of understanding. But Josh dodged, turning the blame around, suggesting she'd sparked drama by not joining in, as if her heartbreak was a buzzkill on his good time. That's not love. That's a masterclass in evasion. What happens when someone's sorry lands not as a healing balm, but as a last-ditch effort to escape guilt? Does remorse mean anything if it comes only after every bridge has burned and all that's left is the smoke? Elise sat across from Josh in the cold light of morning, the rift between them growing wider with every awkward silence. She tried not to beg, tried not to break, but every word hung heavy between them, reminders of nights spent alone while her boyfriend celebrated his freedom. This isn't just a story of wild parties or missed goodbyes. It's a warning, played out in real time, of what happens when someone lets distraction take the driver's seat in their love life. The question isn't whether Josh will ever change, but whether Elise can keep pretending not to notice that she's always last on his list. If you've ever wondered if saying sorry after the damage is done really works, wait until you see the moment when apologies become nothing but background noise in a relationship drowning in broken promises. Save your sympathy for Elise, because she's about to face the answer to that desperate hope every partner has. Will he ever make her the priority, or is she destined to be the one left holding the memories alone? Perspective is a funny thing, especially when one person is rewriting the entire story after the credits have already rolled. Josh, ever the smooth talker, sits with his arms crossed in the aftermath, rewriting last night's disaster from his own playbook. According to him, Elise gave the green light to invite his friends over, so if things went sideways, that's apparently on her. His tone? Defensive, practiced, just confident enough to plant doubt, but never quite vulnerable enough to admit fault. He repeats it, she started a fight for no reason. She knew the plan. As if giving permission to party was the same as consenting to be ignored on the most important night of their relationship. These aren't new moves, this is classic deflection. One person cries alone, the other spins a tale to keep his conscience tidy. Josh drops "I love you" like it's small talk, but every action hits in the opposite direction. Love isn't a text, or a last-minute sorry whispered through a bedroom door. Love is what you do when no one's watching, and Josh picks the crowd every single time. Elise hears the right words but lives inside the wrong reality, forever measuring what's promised against what's delivered. Can love survive on empty promises? If feelings were enough, Elise wouldn't be packing her suitcase with a gut full of regret, and Josh wouldn't be staring at the floor, quietly relieved the fight finally gave him an exit. Slide back to Aviva, and the cold logic of heartbreak by text feels even sharper in this age of digital illusions. There's no fade out, no lingering hug at the door. One second you're planning a future, the next you're reading a breakup on a cracked phone screen, thumb shaking, desperate for a sign that it's all just a glitch. Aviva isn't the first woman left gasping for closure in the blue light of her bedroom, but her heartbreak is brutally new. There's no ceremony, no shared memory to toast or mourn. Instead, she's trapped in a loop of unanswered questions and haunting receipts, ghosted by a man she thought she knew, who won't even give her honesty as a parting gift. So, is anyone in these sagas brave enough to tell the truth? On reality TV, the lines blur faster than a filter, with everyone curating stories and rewriting motivations. Maybe Josh genuinely believes his own excuses, or maybe it's safer to stay lost in the party than to face his own empty reflection. Elise, trapped in love's waiting room, tries to stitch together the mismatched timelines. Was any of it real, or were the warning signs there from the start? She wants someone to step up, own the mistakes, make her feel seen. Instead, she is fed gaslight and guilt. Her feelings called overreacting or crazy, while the real crazy is how easy it is for some people to watch someone else's pain and shrug. Aviva, meanwhile, replays the text with a mixture of disbelief and humiliation. Is she supposed to beg for answers from a man who can't face her? The pain is sharp, but what keeps her up isn't the loss of love, it's the shattering of trust in her own judgment. Blindsided, she craves a sign, any sign, that she wasn't wrong for imagining forever. Was Stig always this distant, or did he turn cold only when commitment felt close enough to matter? In this game, everyone claims honesty, but every move shreds another layer of truth. Maybe love here is less about romance and more about control. Who controls the narrative? Who escapes blame? Who controls whether goodbye comes with kindness or cruelty? If anyone's still pretending honesty rules this show, keep your eyes on the next moves, because sooner or later, the truth always finds a way out. Sometimes in a drunken confession, sometimes in a desperate act, and sometimes in a silence so loud, it drowns out every sweet word that ever came. Before, it's almost poetic how fast Rick goes from self-pity to finger-pointing, never quite pausing long enough to examine the mess at his own feet. You'd think breaking someone's trust is at least worth a sincere apology, but Rick isn't about to risk his ego on accountability. As he slouches in the airport, sadness written in the lines on his face, he blames his ex for reaching out, blames Trisha for not being understanding enough, blames circumstance, distance, timing, basically, everything except his own choices. The way he tells it, he's a victim of bad luck, nothing more, as if fidelity and maturity are hazards of love that anyone could trip over. But let's be real. Rick's problem started long before his phone buzzed with a message from his ex. Some people don't just attract drama, they secretly crave it, keeping chaos like a backup plan for when real intimacy starts to feel too close for comfort. Watch his moves. Every decision is made with one foot out the door. He keeps old flames on standby, convinced he's one text away from reliving the thrill, even if it's at the expense of the partner sitting right beside him. It isn't about love, it's about options, and Rick treats relationships like they're a menu. Pick one, keep the others warm in the kitchen, just in case. Trisha, blindsided, pours her heart out only to find her pain dismissed as overreaction, another casualty in Rick's endless quest for distraction. Now stack Rick's games beside Josh's party-first loyalty or Stig's cowardly text, and a pattern jumps right out. A refusal to sit with discomfort, a hunger for validation from everywhere but the person who matters, and an allergy to admitting real fault. Josh tells himself love is enough even when his actions prove the opposite, celebrating every night but the ones that require real presence. Stig, for all his words, vanishes the moment commitment gets real, leaving nothing but confusion in his wake, no clean break, just a hazy digital void. And Rick, ever the escape artist, won't block his ex because it would be like erasing our time together, as if emotional cheating is a tribute to nostalgia, not a choice that destroys trust. It begs the question, what is it about accountability that sends these men running? If admitting you messed up puts a dent in your self-image, have you ever really loved anyone but yourself? There are jokes to be made. If dodging responsibility burned calories, these guys would be fitness models by now. But the punchline isn't funny for their partners left clutching empty promises. Somewhere in the wreckage, it's clear. These stories aren't about wild nights or sketchy texts. They're about people who can't stand their own reflection long enough to admit the problem isn't fate. It's choices. So, do any of these relationships stand a chance when admitting fault feels like a fate worse than breaking up? There's only so many times you can reframe betrayal as a misunderstanding before everyone involved wakes up and realizes you can't build love on blame. What's left when no one in the room is willing to raise their hand and say, "It's me. I broke it. I wish I hadn't. But I did." Maybe the real hope isn't in the relationships themselves, but in who finally decides that pointing fingers isn't as healing as facing the truth, even if it hurts. Broken trust draws its own gravity. Sometimes people cling to a crumbling relationship with a force that looks like hope from the outside but feels more like fear on the inside. The truth is, nobody sticks around chaos for the thrill alone. They stay because certainty, even if it's unhappy, can feel safer than the unknown. There's a comfort in old patterns, even painful ones, because at least you know where the landmines are. With Aviva, Elise, and Trisha, the cracks didn't just appear overnight. They watched the warning signs pile up, hoping with each new red flag that things might finally turn a corner. When, in reality, those red flags were just banners announcing what was coming all along. People talk about intuition, gut feelings, that tiny warning voice in your head that says something isn't right. And yet, when you've invested months or years, when you've promised family and friends this is your person, it's almost easier to paint over the warning signs than admit the foundation is rotten. Take Elise. She knew Josh's loyalty always bent toward the party, but she let herself believe that love would eventually win out over impulse. Maybe if she was a little more patient, a little more understanding, things would change. It's a logic trap, the idea that loving harder can fix someone else's emotional potholes. Psychology calls that intermittent reinforcement, that dizzying cycle where every small act of affection from someone unreliable becomes a jackpot win, making all the pain forgettable for a moment. You wait through the storms because every so often you get sunshine, and the promise of that next perfect moment keeps you hooked. But the longer you stay, the more you start blaming yourself for the lightning. If only you were quieter about your worries, more fun, less demanding, maybe the storm would pass for good. By the time reality sets in, you're so spun around that you don't trust your own memory of how things started going wrong. It's no coincidence these relationships combust around major crossroads. Engagements, goodbyes, the last night together before oceans split you. There's pressure. Big pressure. For people like Josh, Stig, and Rick, pressure cracks the mask wide open. When difficult conversations need to happen, their reflex is to slip out the back, chase a party, or hide behind a softly delivered non-answer. Their partners, meanwhile, analyze every word, every look, thinking if they can only decode the puzzle, closure will make all the heartbreak worth it. But closure is rarer than forgiveness in the world of digital breakups. Aviva's not the type to let her life story end with 3 lines on a phone screen, so she presses for answers. She replays the breakup in her mind, a proposal, plans for a future, now trashed in seconds. She wants, needs, some explanation from Stig. Why the silence after Houston? Why the cold text instead of a call? Was there another woman, or was it always about not being able to love her the way she deserved? So she tries to reach out, hoping for closure, thinking maybe if he says the right thing, her heart will stop racing every time she remembers his name. But sometimes, chasing closure from someone avoidant is like running after smoke. It slips through your fingers, leaving you coughing on all the words they never said. Every viewer at home gets a front row seat to this spiral. Because let's be honest, there's a reason these shows make such addictive TV. People love a train wreck they can understand. Is it drama, or is it relatable? When a fiancé vanishes or a boyfriend parties away the last night, everyone watching knows someone, maybe even themselves, who forgave one too many times, hoping for a miracle. We eat popcorn and call out the red flags from our couches, safe in the knowledge it won't be our hearts breaking on screen. Until, of course, those patterns show up in our own relationships, and the distance between audience and cast suddenly closes. In their private moments, Elise and Aviva both stare down the aftermath. Elise alternates between blaming herself and blaming Josh. Was she too much, or was he never enough? Her friends tell her she dodged a bullet, but she keeps scrolling his social media, desperate for a sign he's hurting too. Aviva hunts for old texts, scrolling through months of inside jokes, as if somewhere in those words she'll find the one mistake that could have changed everything. The sting isn't always from the breakup itself. Sometimes it's the cold sweat of self-doubt, the constant ping of what if and if only until it drowns out every rational thought. Trisha, meanwhile, faces her own emotional Rubik's Cube. Does she cut Rick off for good or let the door swing open one last time, risking another round of confusion for the hope that maybe, he'll change? Viewers shout at their screens, convinced any sane person would run. But real attachment doesn't live on screen. It's built from tiny, daily investments, and pulling back is like tearing off your own skin. Maybe it's easier to let the cycle repeat itself a little longer, because starting over seems harder than fixing the same problems all over again. In truth, most people don't stay for the chaos. They stay for who they thought the other person would become. They keep faith that one grand gesture, one honest apology, could rewrite every pain that came before. That hope can burn slow enough to last years, even as evidence to the contrary piles up at your feet. Sometimes the worst pain isn't the breakup. It's realizing you no longer trust yourself, no longer recognize your own needs in the shadow of someone else's dysfunction. Yet, as messy as their roads are, these women still try to wrestle power from a narrative that wants to brand them as victims. Aviva, instead of vanishing into self-pity, demands closure, even knowing she might never get it on her terms. Elise resists the urge to forgive out of routine, trying to learn the difference between loving someone and losing herself in someone. Trisha stands at a crossroads of hope and self-respect, the next step heavier than anything she imagined when she first said "I do." So which is worse, the sting of being left, or the slow poison of doubting yourself every night after the goodbye? For these women, and for those watching with their own scars, the pain doesn't end with the last message. The story keeps unspooling long after the credits roll, a test not of their capacity for heartbreak, but their ability to remember who they are when love forgets to look back. With every unanswered text and broken promise, someone gets a little closer to stepping off the merry-go-round. The question is, who finally gets off first? And when they do, what part of themselves do they get back? Rick stands at the airport, backpack slung on one shoulder, rehearsing 100 versions of this goodbye in his mind, but none of them feeling quite real. He expected silence, maybe relief, maybe the dull ache of defeat, but definitely not Trisha's silhouette weaving through the crowd, eyes locking with his at the security gate. Suddenly, every fake resolve he carried starts to crack. She says she came to bring a silly little gift she'd bought for them, matching outfits from before the drama started, but anyone who's ever loved knows the gift is just an excuse for one final connection. There's hope flickering between them, tangled up with fresh pain, questions about closure, and fear that this scene is only another page in a story that can't quite finish itself. Watching them, you can almost feel the push and pull inside Trisha. She wants to act strong, to keep the boundaries she rehearsed 1,000 times in the bathroom mirror, but the look Rick gives her is a complicated mix of guilt, longing, and a promise he doesn't know how to keep. He says he loves her. He looks at her like he can't imagine walking away. But behind all that, there's something slippery in his eyes, like he's holding back a truth, or maybe just scared to be honest about the hold his ex still has over him. Trisha tells herself that showing up is just about closure, but her hands shake a little as she passes him the gift, as if somewhere deep down she's still craving a miracle. Forgiveness, at moments like this, looks romantic from a distance. Face to face, it's raw and terrifying. Is it healing, or is she just enabling the very cycle that already broke her heart? Rick tells himself he can change, even promises her again that the past is past. But there's not a single viewer who isn't holding their breath, afraid she'll fold just because seeing him hurts less than letting go for good. Trisha, brave enough to show up but not quite strong enough to walk away without one last look, has become an expert in hope and heartbreak. Maybe, for a breath or two, they both believe it could be different. Maybe Trisha thinks Rick will finally block his ex, finally put her first, finally act like the man he claims to be when nobody is watching. But hope isn't a plan, and the warning signs are still painted across every memory they share. Half-truths, avoidance, loyalty that slips the minute temptation calls his name. Rick tries to play humble, says he'll do anything, but stumbles when pressed to cut off his ex, making excuses about our memories and proving nothing changes except the words he uses to delay the decision. The crowd keeps moving, flights keep boarding, but these two are locked in their own orbit, unable to say yes or no, always circling the old arguments and incomplete promises. Why do the worst goodbyes never stick? Is it because unfinished love leaves a hole that new beginnings struggle to fill? Or is Rick hiding something deeper? A fear of being alone, of facing himself, or just the possibility that he never belonged to one person in the first place? The next chapter depends on whether Trisha can tell the difference between forgiveness and self-betrayal, and whether Rick finally decides that a clean slate is worth more than clinging to a history that doesn't fit anymore. For now, the story lingers at the gate, uncertain, aching, begging to know if love can end mid-sentence or if it always circles back for one last word. Closure isn't a ceremony, it's a choice. One so much harder than television makes it seem. On this kind of stage, people show up with apologies ready, but when the spotlight fades, real apologies are rare and actions speak the loudest. Josh tells Elise he's sorry in low, hungover whispers, but his feet wander to any room but the one she's in, and his promises dissolve before sunrise. When Elise leaves for the airport, Josh offers her a ride that feels more like a last obligation than a desperate attempt to fix things. He says he doesn't know how many times he can apologize, but for Elise, every apology feels emptier than the one before. She knows now that love isn't about how many times someone says sorry, it's about what they do when you need them most. So she finally lets go, not because she stopped loving him, but because she loves herself enough to stop hearing the same story on repeat. Aviva sits in her apartment, the echo of Stig's text still humming in her head, a ghost of a relationship that ended without conversation or clarity. She could have begged for closure, pleaded for him to explain himself, but there's something about being ghosted by the person you thought would share your life that changes you in ways you can't quite name. At first, she sends one last text. Nothing long, nothing dramatic. She wants to leave a piece of herself on the record, a small demand for dignity after weeks of silence. When the answer doesn't come, or comes with the same empty evasions, she doesn't spiral into blame. She unfollows, blocks, deletes the photos, packs away the hope that tomorrow brings a different response. The power isn't in getting closure from him, it's in making her own closure. Aviva walks away before he has the last word, taking every lesson with her. Her dignity returns not through acceptance of Stig's behavior, but through the act of refusing to chase clarity from someone who gives only chaos. Elise, meanwhile, forces herself to unpack her feelings. Alone in her room with new silence, phone untouched and messages unread, deciding what version of herself she wants to bring into her next chapter. Does she let anger curdle her memories or allow the truth of what she needs guide her forward? She doesn't excuse Josh's flakiness, doesn't diminish her own hurt, but after the bitterness peaks and recedes, clarity builds in the empty space, she deserves reciprocity, not lip service. It takes real grit not to text "I miss you" at midnight, not to scroll through old photos and relive the best nights. But little by little, Elise takes ownership of her own closure, understanding that happiness isn't waiting at the end of another round of apologies. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is mourn the loss and still walk away, stronger for what you survived. Rick's promises, meanwhile, teeter on the edge of sincerity and strategy. At the airport, his face is a picture of regret, but regret alone never changed anyone. He swears to Trisha that he will change, that he'll put her first this time, all while refusing to sever old ties or prove loyalty through action. The offer of "let's stay friends" is less about love and more about buying time. Trisha recognizes the trap, sees every familiar excuse for what it is. She hesitates, still haunted by how quickly comfort and pain trade places when Rick is involved. Her friends voice what her heart already knows. Growth is only real if it's followed with change you can see, not just words that evaporate on the runway. Where do all these broken promises land when the flight's board, the texts dry up, and everyone goes their separate ways? If love's final act is to wait for the other person to change, then the true story here is about what happens when you stop waiting, when you mourn the version of them that never arrived and start living as if someday is today, not fantasy. The lesson isn't about hardened hearts or perfect closure. It's that you get to choose how long you keep running the same race and how soon you step off the track for something better. Somewhere between all the apologies and second chances, the real shift happens when a person gets tired. A tired that's deeper than sleep, a tired that comes from giving and forgiving, from holding out hope that's always answered with disappointment. Aviva's tired becomes her power. She stops looking for signs from Stig, starts making her own peace. Elise's tired becomes her guardrail, proof that loneliness is less painful than being alone beside someone who keeps forgetting you're there. Rick's tired, if it ever truly settles in, will either force him to face what he's lost, or he'll drift from partner to partner, always chasing a fix for something only he can solve. The cycle of almost and fake apologies, broken promises, and late-night texts, it's not fate, it's a pattern. One every cast member has the power to break. Some do, some don't. Trisha stands at her own crossroads, weighing hope against experience, wondering if she'll believe Rick again or believe herself this time. Closure isn't a door slammed with fury, it's a soft turn of the handle, a quiet room after the noise, the feeling you get when you finally stop asking for someone to prove they're different and begin trusting yourself enough to never ask again. What happens when you finally stop waiting for someone to change? The answer isn't dramatic or easy, but it's real. You change instead. And that's how new stories begin. Sometimes holding on to hope is the bravest act, but letting go is where the real freedom starts. If any of these couples ever truly figure that out, maybe the next text won't be an ending, but a start that doesn't leave anyone waiting on the other end. Some people treat relationships like fire drills, drop everything and run the second things get complicated. Josh throws the word sorry around as if it's a free drink ticket, then ghosts his own girlfriend for one last night out. Maybe if he partied less and listened more, his apologies wouldn't bounce off the walls while Elise sat packing her broken heart into an overhead bin. Rick, meanwhile, has a better relationship with his ex's phone number than he does with accountability. The man clings to old conversations like vacation souvenirs, all while promising Trisha a future that looks suspiciously like a rerun. Imagine being so allergic to closure that you'd rather keep every door open than pick one room to clean. That's not romance. That's an escape room with no exit. Stig wins the prize for most creative breakup. Why face your fiancé when you can end an engagement from the comfort of Wi-Fi? That's not innovation. That's emotional bankruptcy. When did basic respect become a collector's item? These guys are all car alarms, loud, unreliable, and nobody actually trusts them when it matters. Their partners, meanwhile, are expected to swallow blame, wait for scraps of attention, and hope someday real change appears in something other than a text. This isn't love, it's Olympic-level avoidance disguised as second chances. But the joke's tired, and viewers know it. Words are cheap. You can say I love you after pouring a drink or before ordering an Uber, but if your actions scream otherwise, what's the score? Love without action is like a reality show with no contestants. The only thing real is the fallout. Do you want a partner who stands there when the party stops, or the kind who jumps ship when the music slows down? If you're out here defending the Joshes, Ricks, or Stigs of your own life, ask if you'd let your best friend settle for that, or if you'd drag them right out of that mess, heels and all. The truth? Real love keeps showing up. When it's boring, when it's complicated, when no one's looking and there's nothing to win except trust. All these screenshots and second guessing are just reminders that the only person you're responsible for is yourself. Are your boundaries up, or are you waiting for someone to finally mean it this time? Every girl who chased closure from a man who can't spell honesty deserves better than a late-night apology tour. If your self-worth is measured by how quickly someone returns a text, it's time to switch networks. Because the real upgrade isn't a person, it's peace of mind. Think about it. How many times does forgiveness turn into permission to be hurt again? How often does we can work it out mean I won't change a thing? These stories aren't cautionary tales for TV, they're practice runs for your own life. Don't wait to be ghosted in your own story before you remember what you deserve. Set the bar higher, and don't let someone else's comfort with chaos lower your own standards. Watching someone else's romantic car crash is entertainment, living in it is a choice. Now, before you go, imagine this. What if next time, the tables turn and it isn't a fiancé sneaking off with an ex, but a bride whose old flame never really left the chat? Can trust withstand a hidden text? Or does one secret message topple an entire fairy tale? Your answer might be waiting in the next episode, where loyalty, drama, and second chances get stress tested from a whole new angle. Would you trust your partner's phone unlocked? Or is there a part of you bracing for a truth you're not ready to see? Don't blink, because the next round might just rewrite who gets the last word in love, and you'll want to see every single receipt as it drops.